Hi, everybody. Welcome to Almost Lost to Time. In this podcast, we are looking at things that are almost lost to time. I am your host, Tim, and this series of podcasts, we are going to delve into car chase movies. We started the first episode with Bullet, Steve McQueen. We're going to go into the next episode here, the next car chase movie, that is. And we're going to basically we're just going to go through the 70s car chase movies that don't really get the attention that they deserve. They kind of get lost in time, almost lost to time. See what we did there? That's a little clever play on words. Or it's not, whatever, we're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about some movies that, people don't really think about, may not know. If they do know, they may not seen them or heard of them or thought about them, for that matter, for a very long time. And today we're going to look at 1971's Vanishing Point. Now, depending on who you talk to, this is actually the movie that kind of kick-started the whole car chase scene. This movie's basically just an hour and a half car chase. It's a pretty good car chase, I will say. We'll kind of, let's run through the logistics of this here. First of all, like we do all the time, we're going to give the Rotten Tomatoes score, which is at a fresh score of 79% with the critics and an 81% with the audience. And honestly, that really doesn't surprise me. This movie stars Barry Newman, Cleavon Little, Dean Jagger, and is directed by Richard C. Serafina. This movie is a pretty fun movie. Like I say, we're not going to go blow by blow or scene by scene. We're just going to, talk about it a little bit. There will be some scenes that I will discuss, but as far as a complete movie breakdown, we're not going to do that. We have a lot of things to do, and I'm not going to waste your time listening to me try to make some sort of coherent sentence to describe this movie or a scene, but I will say this movie's a pretty fun movie. It's a good 70s movie. Let's start at the beginning, and so basically we are introduced to a car speeding through Denver, Colorado, and the driver gets out of the car, and he's basically a car deliverer. He delivers cars. It's kind of cool. It doesn't really give us any information on who this character is. We don't learn his name just yet. We do learn that his next assignment is to deliver a 1970s Dodge Challenger RT 440 Magnum he's got to drive it from Colorado to San Francisco, and he's given himself this goal of getting it there by like 3 days, I believe. He tells himself he wants to get it there by Sunday afternoon. The guy that I guess his dealer or his manager or his car, I don't even know what he would be. Car assigner, assignment assigner, if that, could come out any smoother. Maybe not, tells him, man, you need to take a break. You're working yourself too much. You need a couple days to kind of regroup. And our driver's like, nah, I want to keep going. And so he takes off in this really nice Dodge Challenger. It's white. And next scene, you see him going to his quote-unquote pharmacist that's located outside of a bar. These are the kind of pharmacists that operate out of the back of vans or alleys, or, you really don't need a prescription to get the quote-unquote medication these guys are offering, and meets with his pharmacist and asks him for uppers. And the dealer, we'll just go ahead and take the professional link off him. His dealer is, you want speed? And our driver's like, yeah, give me some speed, and pulls out this big bag, and our driver just pours a handful, just massive handful, and downs them all right there. And the dealer's like, whoa, man, what are you doing? Take it easy. You're going to overdose. And the driver's like, I got to get this thing to San Francisco by like 3 p.m. And the dealer's like, there's no way you're going to get it there by 3 p.m. And our driver's like, you know what? I tell you what, I'll make a bet with you. If I can get it there by 3 p.m., this shipment or this refill of my prescription, we'll just go ahead and call it for, you can give it to me for free. And if not, then I'll pay double for it. And of course, in the 70s, the dealer's like, yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. We can do that. And, and so there we go. We've got that established that our driver is kind of, he needs a little uppers to make this trip within his time frame. And so off he goes, and he's just driving, and it's cool. Like I say, it's a driving movie. And so he's driving, and you see scenery, and it's got he's got the radio cranking, and he's cranking 70s tunes and watching the scenery go by. And then all of a sudden, just for whatever reason, a couple motorcycle cops come up behind him, and they do the classic, pull over. Of course, their lights aren't on, and our driver's just like, to hell with that, and ends up running one of them off the road, and does this pretty spectacular motorcycle accident, and he drives like I said, he gets in a pretty exciting motorcycle accident, and the second motorcycle cop kind of stops to make sure that his partner is okay, and the wrecked cop is giving him a go get him, get that bastard. We're gonna go show him who's the boss, type of thing, and so he's off and in hot pursuit. And while the driver sees the motorcycle cop have his accident, he kind of gets a dazed look, or blank stare. There we go. He gets a blank stare on his face, and all of a sudden we get a flashback to where he was in a motorcycle race and has a accident on the motorcycle, and he kind of shakes it off, and now he's back in present day. And I will say, as the sequences go along, you kind of, at the beginning, you don't know who this guy is, or even his name for that matter, but as certain situations were to come up, he either has a memory of it, or something in his life has happened to him, and so he will see something in present day that'll kind of trigger these memories, and they kind of show us throughout the course of the movie. We'll get to another one in a little bit, but this is the first one that we encounter. Is he wrecks the motorcycle cop, and then stares off into has this little memory, and then he wrecks his motorcycle. Which that actually, I will say, if I could paint you a picture, that motorcycle wreck that he had as a motorcycle racer was actually pretty cool. It was like a 4-bike pileup, and these guys are hauling ass, and they wreck on their bikes, and they just go flying. And you think back then, like I've said it a lot as far as movies from this time, that shit's real. Those are practical, real stunts and real stuntmen, and they're really wrecking those cars, and real people in there. And there's no exception to this one either, where you see 4 bikes pile up on each other, and all 4 of those riders just get thrown to hell and back, and sliding across the asphalt, or running into bales of hay, or just stuff like that. And it's pretty impressive. Granted, after the wreck, of course, the motorcyclists take off their helmets, and they are our stars of the movie. So of course they're not going through these horrific accidents. Hats off to the stuntmen from the 70s, because man, that's a hard way to make a living, being thrown around like that. But you have my respect and my admiration, I guess. So we got that going for us. So then after that, we got to our next scene, where we see a blind man walking in like a small town. Actually, before all that starts, the movie actually starts with a couple bulldozers coming down this really small town, down this main street, and they're creating a roadblock. And so it's one of those movies that starts kind of where it starts with the end, and then we see kind of the end, not really the end, if that makes sense, but we see almost to the end, and we see our driver seeing the bulldozers and turn around and heading up the road the other way. And then of course he's greeted with like a 4-car convoy, or 4-cop car convoy, coming at him in the other direction, and spins around and goes back into town. And then that's where we get the still shot with, 3 days later, Denver, Colorado type of thing. And so we got that. So Now that we have all that set up, we're going to go back to where we see the blind man walking through the streets of this small town, and he turns out to be a DJ with he's got his little dog, and this is played by the actor Cleavon Little, which you may remember him from Blazing Saddles. He was the sheriff in Blazing Saddles. His role in this movie is kind of interesting, where he plays the he's a disc jockey, and then as the pursuit gets more national attention, he kind of talks to our driver through the radio, kind of giving him the what's what. Somehow they must have a police scanner in the radio station, and they're trying to come up with a plan how to get this speeding driver apprehended, and he gets the information and passes it on to our driver, and so we have that dynamic going, which was kind of cool. Some of the scenes where I felt maybe I wasn't paying super close attention. The DJ's talking on the radio, and our driver hears it, and he's like answering him like that. The DJ's asking him questions, and our driver's listening to him, and you have a good point there. Yeah, that's good. And somehow the DJ hears it, so it's like they're having a conversation through the radio. Again, I kind of wonder if the DJ's part acts as the driver's conscience, maybe in some points. Granted, like I say, his main role is to hear what the police are saying on the scanner and then relaying that information onto the driver so he can avoid the roadblocks and everything the police are setting up to try to get him into custody. But like I say, maybe I'm just looking into it too much. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. It does kind of slow down a little bit in the middle. But for the most part, it's a pretty smooth, drive. If you like fast cars and hot rods, and I mean, even Challengers, God, those 70s Challengers are pretty badass. And so, but we do, so we're back on the road with our driver. Let's just get back on the road with our driver. He's driving along, and this dude in a Porsche, like Roadster, Jaguar Type E Roadster comes alongside him, and he's doing the, hey, you want to race? And our driver's just like, yeah, whatever. And so they're racing along the highway, and you got the 70s tunes cranking, and the overhead shot of the two cars racing down the road, and that's pretty cool. And then the Challenger just blows the doors off the Jaguar, and the driver of the Jaguar is, for whatever reason, just all of a sudden gets pissed. He's like, oh, what you goddamn, you son of a bitch. And I'm thinking, well, you kind of started it, motherfucker. This is your whole let's race, and then he blows the doors off you, and now you're going to be a dick about it. So, accept your defeat with some grace, you fucking bastard. But so he goes wrecking off the road and ends up in there's a little river running along the highway, and he wrecks, and our driver gets out and checks on him. And one thing I will say is this driver actually, you don't really get his reasoning for why he's running cops off the road, or he didn't really run the Jaguar off the road. It just kind of happened. They were just going too fast. And so he's checking to make sure the Jaguar driver's alive, I guess, basically is probably what he's making sure of. And as he's checking, then he has another flashback where he's back in a stock car, and he's, again, just in the heat of the race, and all of a sudden there's a 9-car pileup, and he's one of the drivers, and the car he's driving just gets flipped and just does these super duper rollover, and that's pretty cool. I will say that race cars or car races from that time, those cars were awesome. They're not all, decked out like they are nowadays. They're actually like the car. Those were the cars. They, I'm sure they had modifications that we may not have gotten, but as far as the frame and everything, those were the car frames we had, and that's pretty badass. And seeing these cars just rip around the track, and then, so that was pretty cool. And so now, between the two flashbacks, we know he has a history as a racer, a motorcycle racer and a car racer. And then back to present, Jaguar guy gets out screaming, throwing fists in the air, and that's when our driver's just like, okay, you're good. Then takes off, and on the road he goes again. And so we're back on the road, and we get some more super cool scenery. I've mentioned it before, and I'll go ahead and say it again, is one thing I do enjoy about movies from this time, and I guess from the past, from where we are now, is you get a look at what the scenery was. I mean, sure, the majority of it, like the backcountry stuff, probably still looks relatively similar to like it did then as it does now, but just something about the feel of driving through some of those small towns. And I mean, yeah, it is a movie. I get it. Yeah, we can go, yeah, Tim, that's a movie. They probably built that town. Yeah, I got that. But some of them may not be. I mean, the design of those towns were probably based on some sort of small podunk little back alley town that, or I guess the proper term is the 2-horse town, that were littered all up and down, back highways at the time. And so it's like a time capsule, really, of the era that was back then. And, so that's pretty cool. And then we get, what do we get? So as the cops are sharing their information, they have a license plate of the car. They kind of get some information. We learn our driver's name is Kowalski. And so they start passing the information along. And I love it, again, a product of the time. There was no internet. And so there was no, put a description of the car and the driver on the internet. And so multiple states and multiple police agencies have access to this. No, they're doing it over the radio and passing information along. And I love it. He's driving along and he's getting pursued by these, a couple cop cars, and they're just hauling ass and driving through the back country. And all of a sudden the car just takes off. Doesn't take off. He's continuing his aggressiveness to get away from the cops, and the cops end up pulling off to the side of the road, and they're just like the classic. And I love this about that time. You see them, they stop, they're just throwing their hat on the hood of their car or the roof of the car, and then it kind of turns around, so you see the back view of them, and they're at the state line. The big sign says "Welcome to Utah," as our Challengers just hauling ass through the new state. And I love it, the old state. I don't remember what state they were leaving. Maybe it was Colorado, if I know my geography, and I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and guess it was Colorado. He's now in Utah, and they're just like, well, now he's Utah's problem. Or actually, I'm way off on this. He doesn't drive into Utah. He drives into Nevada. He leaves Utah. Yeah, talk about not having my notes correctly organized. Jeez. It's almost like this is some sort of amateur production or something. So go ahead and email me at arnoldstallone@gmail.com and tell me I suck. But you know what? That's all right. I'm having fun doing this. So anyway, so basically the Utah State Patrol has to pull over because he speeds into Nevada. And then that's when we get now he's Nevada's problem. And I loved it because that shit doesn't pull up now. I mean, if you try to run through state, man, they could still follow you, and they've radioed ahead, and so the next state is aware that you're coming, and so. But that always gets a chuckle out of me when you see these older movies and they're running state from state, and then the current state has to pull over and be like, well, I guess that's as far as we can go. So now he's hauling ass through Nevada, and disc jockey's still talking to him, and the disc, I don't know if I ever gave his name, but they call him the Super Soul. This guy's Super Soul, and he's kind of building up Kowalski as the last American hero, kind of sticking it to the man, as they say, and just not going to take any shit. And it's kind of funny. Like I say, you don't know why he's running these cops off the road. Maybe it was the methamphetamines he was on. I don't know. Could be. I'm no doctor, but you never know. And like I say, it's the 70s. They don't really delve into that kind of thought process. And you know what? God bless them. I'm kind of glad they don't. I feel the movies around these times, they go right for the meat of the matter. They don't, well, what's his backstory like? Does he have a bad home life with the old lady? Does he have an old lady? We don't need to know shit like that. We want to see that car hauling ass. We want to see that car racing. We want to see that car running from the cops. We want to see the cops wrecking. We want to see, that's what we want to see with a movie like this. And I tell you what, that's what we get. And God bless him. Like I said, I bought the Blu-ray of this many, many years ago. And even on the front of the box, it says the greatest car chase movie of all time. And you know what, folks? I have to agree with them, because as far as car chase movies, this is about, like, as I said at the beginning of this is an hour and a half car chase. And man, it's great. It's funny. I think we're about when we got to the 40-minute mark, I'm thinking, this guy's been driving for almost a day, maybe 12, 13 hours, and he hasn't filled up with gas yet. And it's been a long time since I've seen it, so I couldn't, before I watched it recently, if I tried giving you this synopsis of this movie, I would just literally sound like a bigger babbling moron than I do right now. But I'm thinking, if he goes this whole movie without fueling up once, I'm going to call bullshit. And almost as soon as I thought that, he pulls into the first gas station and sees a younger woman come out. And again, I love the time, self-serve or full service, sitting in the car, and she's, how can I help you? And he's, fill her up. And I should mention at this point too, our main character really doesn't have a lot of dialogue. And so that's kind of part of his mystique, where he doesn't really, chat too much. He has a little bit of dialogue in the beginning, and then he has a little dialogue with his drug dealer. And now he's having a little dialogue with this, let's say 16, 17-year-old girl, fueling up his car. And that's when we get our third flashback, where now he's sitting in a cop car, and in the back seat there's probably a senior officer, an older gentleman that's kind of got this girl about the same age, similar look to the girl pumping his gas. And of course the senior officer is trying to get information out of her. Well, as he's doing it, he's becoming very aggressive, and just basically what it is he's trying to take advantage of this girl sexually, and just not a good cop, just a dirty cop as dirty cops could get. And Kowalski's sitting in the front seat, and he's just kind of like, you could just see the look of disgust on his face. And finally he has enough, and he gets out of the front seat and gets in the back and starts stopping this sexual abuse or sexual assault, I should say, that's going on. And the girl gets out and runs away. And of course the senior officer's just like, what the hell are you doing? I almost had the information, and blah, blah, blah. And just, so that's another kind of layer of the onion. So as I say, that kind of shows that, okay, well, now he has a history in law enforcement. And so he's not exactly a complete douchebag, and actually kind of a good guy about it and stuff. Cut back to present day, and he's all fueled up, and he takes off again. And it's kind of like, again, it is a car chase movie, but it's also a kind of an adventure where he meets characters along the way. And it reminds me of like the movie actually that jumped into my mind, that kind of took maybe some thought behind it. A movie that kind of, it kind of reminded me of Thelma and Louise in a way, where you're running from the cops, and they have to do this, that, and the other to kind of get the things that they need to get away from the cops. And that's what it kind of reminded me of, to a small degree. Not, not a cut by cut complete, I can see where they got this. But that's, when I was watching this, that's what it kind of reminded me of. Because, as I mentioned, he runs into this old prospector. He gets a flat tire, and he's trying to change it, and all of a sudden he looks up, and there's this rattlesnake there, and it's like, as I would do if there's a rattlesnake. I for me personally, let me throw back the curtain a little bit. I fucking hate snakes. Any kind of snake. I just, and so if I was in a situation where there's a big old fat rattlesnake sitting there just within arm length, I'd be like, holy shit. I'd probably fucking shit myself and turn into a blubbering ball of human fucking emotion on the side of the road. But he was a little more put together than I would have ever been. And then all of a sudden this prospector comes around like, that shit's a big one, you gotta stay away from those snakes, and ends up capturing it. And Kowalski's like, well, what do you do with those? And I sell them for my flour and my tea or coffee or whatever. And he's like, oh, okay. And then they make out a deal with one another. If the prospector helps him change his tire, he'll deliver the prospector to the camp he needs to go to get his to get the things he needs in exchange for these snakes. And so we go there, and it turns out it's one of those hippie camps where they're singing the good graces of whatever they're singing and just love and peace. And turns out they don't need the snakes anymore. And prospector's like, well, wait a minute, where's my stuff? I want my coffee and my flour. And the main guy at the camp is like, well, we'll work something out, and takes this basket with like 7-8 big old rattlesnakes and just kind of does the old heave-o, see you guys later type of deal. And so it's like, well, okay. And so you got that going for you. And so then anyway, like we'll get back on the road with Kowalski, and comes across probably one of my favorite scenes in this whole movie is you see these two guys pushing this car, an old Chevy station wagon, middle of nowhere, just pushing it along. And Kowalski comes up on them, and one of them is, here's the car coming and does the arm wave and gets Kowalski to pull over, and they exchange some words as far as like, yeah, can we get a ride? And Kowalski's like, yeah, sure. And so he agrees to pick up these hitchhikers. And so what they do is they take their shit out of the car, and on the back of the car it has a big old just married placard on there. So we're like, oh, okay, a couple gay guys. Cool. Nothing wrong with that. For 1971, I thought that was kind of a bold move. You didn't really see that very often, but, hey, right on. Good for them. So anyway, they get all their shit out of the car, and they take this car and they push it off the side of the road. Like literally the guy manning the steering wheel just starts cranking the wheel to the right, and the gentleman in the back just keeps pushing, and you just see the car rolling right off the side of the road and right into the, I guess the desert. And okay, the end of that. And I was like, I guess that's one way to get rid of your car, huh? Whatever. So they get and they take off, and one of the guys in the back and one of the guys in the front, and the guy in the front's like, where are you heading? And Kowalski's like, San Francisco. Oh, that's perfect. Why are you not talking so much? And Kowalski's like, oh, I'm just not really a talker. And the guy's like, are you uncomfortable with us? And Kowalski's like, no, not at all. Because we're queer? And it's like, no, not at all. And then the passenger's like, well, why are you laughing? Kowalski's like, I'm not. He's just sitting there. And the guy's like, no, you're laughing on the inside. And I was like, okay, well, this took a turn for the worse really quick. And then the guy's like, okay, this is a stick up. Just puts a gun in his face. I was like, okay, I guess we're going to go down that route, huh? And Kowalski's kind of looking at him and then does one of the quick 70s fight cut scenes. He punches the guy, and then as he's driving, he opens up the door and throws the guy out, and the guy in the back seat's just like, hey, what are you doing? And he punches him and throws him out, and you see them both get thrown out of the car, and then their shit gets thrown out, and then he takes off burning rubber and throws the last little bit of their possessions out the window. And then one of the guys is just like, well, that wasn't nice. And I'm thinking, you dumb bastards, you try to fucking carjack him or rob him or kill him or whatever. What the fuck you expect? I mean, I'm surprised he didn't slam on the brakes and make you bastards go flying through the windshield, but that's just me. So he was a little nicer than I was. So it just made me laugh. That whole exchange. I kind of feel like that was a little my new thing I was going to do was the bad impression theater. I felt like that was act one. So you're welcome for that. But Then we get the cops figure out that they know. Then they pull up Kowalski's record, so they know everything about him. It turns out he was a war hero, and he just has been in and out of the military, and he's got military honors and military awards, and at that time it was Vietnam, so he's got all this Vietnam awards and stuff behind him, and so then they figure out Soul or Super Soul is kind of telling him what they're planning, and they end up locating Super Soul and go through the town and just throw rocks through the windows of the radio station and just beat the shit out of both, because there's a producer there as well, so they beat the shit out of both of them and just fucking tell them, yeah, this is what you're gonna say, you're gonna lead them off track and you're gonna let them know we're not on them, and so you're gonna do that. And then it cuts, and Kowalski is driving down the road in this big old Harley, 70s Harley, I guess it'd be a late 60s Harley with the hippie on it, pulls up next to him, and they kind of chatting a little bit, and the topic of drugs come up, and Kowalski asks him, hey, you got any speed? And the guy's like, no, not on me, but I do it back at my house. And where's your house? And, oh, it's back that way about 5 miles. And, hey, can you help me out? Yeah, no problem. And so they spin around and head back to the house, and we get the hippie guy going in and getting the speed, and Kowalski's just hanging, and he looks over and he sees this naked chick riding a motorcycle, and of course it's in slow-mo, and it's got the 60s love song playing over it, and she's riding the bike slow-mo, and it's like, okay. And turns out obviously that's his old lady. I mean, at first I thought maybe he was having some sort of vision again about the girl and what have you, but no, it's the dude's old lady, as they say. And they end up chatting for a little bit, and the guy, the hippie, comes out with this huge bottle of speed and tells him, yeah, take as much as you want. And so Kowalski, takes a good handful and gives it back to him. And the guy's like, no, take it all. And he's like, no, I don't want all this, man. This is a lot of speed. And, oh, you'll need it for later, type of deal. And so they're chatting again, and all of a sudden, Super Soul comes back on the radio, and just something's different about his tone. He doesn't quite sound himself, and they're having a hard time figuring out. And the hippie calls over his naked girlfriend to come have a listen, and I'm sure Kowalski's thinking, yeah, bring her over. I'd like to have a listen too. Why don't you go ahead and bend over into the car, and then I can get a good listen to what Super Soul's trying to say. And she comes over, and yeah, that's Super Soul, but he don't sound the same. And well, basically what happens is the cops, like I say earlier, the cops kind of get into Super Soul's space, telling him what to say, and so his delivery is not as fluid, not as soulful, maybe. And so yeah, now Kowalski knows Super Soul's been compromised. And then we're getting close to the end here, folks. Trust me, we're almost there. So Kowalski gets back in the car and takes off again, and he's driving down the road, and then cut back to kind of where we started at the beginning, where we got the bulldozers blocking off the road, and we have cop cars on either side of the bulldozers, so he really can't evade that one way or the other. And you see the shot in between the two bulldozers down the road where you see the Charger coming at, or Charger. Yeah, Charger. Is it Charger? Challenger. I can't fucking remember anymore, but Challenger. Yeah, it's not a Charger. Again, notes out of order. Thanks for sticking along with me up to this point. Challenger's coming at him full blast. Pretty sweet scene. Just car right in between the two buckets of these bulldozers, and then all of a sudden he just does not let up and runs headfirst into the bulldozers, and big old fireball, car blows up. There you go. And so let's pause for emotion and kick in the theme music. And there we have it, folks. That was 1971's Vanishing Point. Very interesting. I mean, if you're looking for a deep, thought-provoking movie with twists and turns along the way, this is not it. As I mentioned, we are starting this with car chase movies, and as far as car chase movies go, this one does not disappoint at all. I debated about doing this one so soon into this series, but this movie's fun. And if you like muscle cars, I mean, shit, it don't get any more muscle. Well, I'm sure it does. But again, like I've mentioned before, I'm not a car connoisseur here, so I can't give you the specs on all these or which one's the best. But in my opinion, the Challenger was always awesome. I mean, Dodge's Charger, the Challenger, pretty fucking sweet. And it just sounds awesome. Just listen to that horsepower rumbling. It's in all these drive scenes. I kind of feel like, I'm sure that they kicked up the sound. I mean, come on, let's be serious. This is a movie, and they wanted this car to sound as boss as possible, and they did a good job. And again, it's not short on the car chase. It's like a long road trip movie, but he's hauling ass, which actually kind of makes me, or gives me a good idea on the next one we'll get to. But we're almost done, and I'll go ahead and. But yeah, if you're interested in car chase movies, I checked this one out. This one's good. I was as I was going along doing this, I remember it, but I never saw it. They made a TV movie of this, and they put it on TV, and I can only imagine how watered down that would have been. Like I said, I never saw it. I remember maybe reading about it, maybe when I bought this movie the first time. I never saw it. Doing some research on it, this movie really didn't do very well initially coming out. It didn't make the money they thought it would. I saw that it was a really big hit in the UK, which makes sense because when I bought the DVD, they actually have the UK version on it, and I was thinking about, after this episode's all said and done, going back and watching the UK version and see what kind of differences there are between the two of them. That might be interesting. And if it is completely different, hey, maybe we'll have a Vanishing Point UK Part 2. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But and so, like I say, it didn't do very well. But it was kind of the beginning of the car chase movie, and then there's another car chase movie that came out that did pretty well. I believe it was French Connection, and then they kind of used this as the second movie of a double header at drive-ins, and kind of got its second leg, as they say, which kind of catapulted it into cultural or a cult classic. And again, judging by the Rotten Tomato scores, it did very well. When I pulled this up, I was actually kind of surprised, but hey, there you go. So again, Vanishing Point, you like car chase movies, check it out. So I guess that'll wrap up this episode. I want to thank you if you've made it this long. Again, if you want to email me, you can find me at arnoldorstallone@gmail.com, and let me know what I missed. Maybe there's a car chase movie you're interested in and would like me to talk about it. Maybe there's one you love and that you don't want me to talk about because I don't do it justice. That's cool too. I totally understand. So, like I say, thanks for hanging out and checking me out, and we will see you next time. And I think we will talk about, what should we talk about? You know what? Let's just do it. We're going to talk about the French Connection. There we go, folks. If you're curious, French Connection. So until next time, this is Tim, and you've been